Hi, my name's Lindy Cowling. Welcome to this channel. My website is www.lindycowling.co.uk, email info@lindycowling.co.uk. Short video today, done in the same kind of fashion as the last video I brought out. This one called Top 10 Expose Lightworker Industry False Teachings. Top 10 Expose Lightworker Industry False Teachings. So again, before I launch into this, I was guided to do it a different way. Before I came on camera, I wrote down the top 10 kind of ones. Again, I could have done 20 really, but based on the most common, let's say, misconceptions or the most common held beliefs, I've picked out 10. Again, why am I doing this? Because this is a long-term thing. I've been in this industry 17 years now. It's not a pop at anyone in particular, so please don't take it the wrong way. I'm hoping that you find it helpful. I'm hoping it bursts some belief systems, but also changes a few perceptions in order to help people. As always, everything I do in this channel is in order to help people, hopefully inspire people and help them to move forward, help empower them. So again, don't take it personally if you're in the lightworker industry or you're a client of the lightworker industry. Again, like all industries, you have wonderful rosy apples in there and you have a few rotten apples in there. I mean, that's just life, isn't it? It's the polarization of life on this planet. So let me launch into it. I think I'm going to launch straight into it. Again, now and again, I'll be glancing away because I was guided to write this down, which is very different to the way I normally work. I don't normally write things down first at all, but I was guided to do this and the last one in bullet points in this way. So, number one must focus only on light, not on any inner darkness or inner shadow, or on the prospect of there being any form of darkness on the planet. So the question or the belief, one must focus only on light, not on any inner darkness, inner shadow, or the prospect of there being anything but light and love on the planet. False. And again, before I launch into this, these are my perspectives and my take here, so take it whatever way you like here. False. The inner shadow cannot be resolved without an alchemization of issues to a place of neutrality or harmony. In other words, 0 point field. So without accepting that you have that within you, some shadow and some stuff that you don't really want to look at or face, and without even entertaining the idea of polarization on this planet, i.e. if we didn't have nighttime, we wouldn't have daytime, etc. So without even entertaining the idea that there's any darkness here, one cannot come to a place of transformation and alchemization of inner issues to a place of neutrality or 0 point field of consciousness. Also, under this umbrella, it is important to say there are light programs or false light, which are false light tap-ins, which people inadvertently tap into inside and outside of the industry, which distorts perception and energy. In other words, they believe they are tapping into source, and in fact, they are tapping into a light program. 2, one must focus only on love and all will be okay. False. Whilst love and joy are the highest creationary octaves the human can experience in an emotional form, one can, by focusing entirely on the concept of all is love, also be engaging in a form of spiritual bypassing. Whilst love and joy are the highest octaves in human emotional form one can experience in a creationary concept, meaning that they can create from there as well, and it is all run through the, let's call it the upper expressions of emotion, focusing entirely on the concept that all is love, everything is love, if I just keep thinking love, everything will be okay, can also be a form of spiritual bypassing. In other words, people can use that inadvertently as a way of looking at reality, therefore they're not alchemizing or changing reality, and also bypassing their work on themselves, inner work on themselves. Tracks back to point number 1. 3, anyone that works in the Lightworker industry must be service orientated and be wanting to work on behalf of humanity, an all-round good person. False. The Lightworker industry, just as any other corporation, is made up of predominantly humans. Humans also being comprised of some very helpful, beautiful characteristics, but also some distorted belief systems of their own and programming of their own. Some within the industry, most certainly being lovely people that are service orientated, others being absolutely service to self or feeders on their client's supply of energy. Again, everything I'm talking about here is my own personal experiences in this industry and my own take on it. I never share anything on this channel I haven't experienced, gone through, lived through myself, which makes it authentic, if you know what I mean. 4, to be spiritual and of the heart, one must have a purified, healthy body. False. Whilst it is most beneficial for one's overall well-being, which in turns one's well-being assists the elevation of one's own frequency and vibration, i.e. the octave that one can function from, it has no effect on the actual spirituality of the individual. In other words, for example, it benefits the smoker not to smoke, thereby raising his health, his frequency, his vibration, but it does not directly, the smoking, affect his spirituality. I'm going to repeat that again. In other words, smoking is just one example. Eating to the point of, overeating, eating foods that are unhealthy for you, any kind of drug taking, alcohol, all of these things, many others under those kind of umbrella, but I'm using smoking as an example. In other words, it benefits the smoker indeed not to smoke, because it raises his health, thereby raising his frequency and well-being. It does not affect his spirituality or how spiritual he is. Number 5, all psychics are also spiritual or heart-based. False. Just as many psychics, I'm laughing because I've experienced this so many times with people, just as many psychics that have genuine psychic ability have no spirituality base or are in the heart at all. So let me repeat that, so I muck that up a bit. The question or the statement, all psychics are spiritual or heart-based. False. Just as many psychics or people with psychic ability are not of spirituality or heart-based, and no more in that category than are in the general population. In other words, if you had 100 members of the general public in one room and 100 psychics in another, there would be no more levels in the psychics of spirituality than there would be in the general population. Psychic is an ability, but it's not a guarantee of spirituality. Spirituality is a state of heart consciousness that reflects daily in one's behavior, attitude, and life frequency, in other words, one's embodiment. And again, what I'm saying here, there is absolutely no judgment at all here. So don't take it that way if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, that's not, I'm not meaning it in that way. I'm trying to highlight some things here to bust some belief systems and bust some things that are keeping people tangled up. 6, if a light worker is very knowledgeable, it means they are genuine. False. Just because an individual within the lightworker industry has studied books extensively or been on many courses or made many videos does not mean their vibration or frequency has reached a pitch at which they have become authentic in mind, body, spirit, and soul. Just because an individual also is attractive or charismatic does not mean they come from a spiritual frequency. Now, also, it doesn't mean if they are charismatic or attractive that they're not spiritual, but it can work the other way. Basic psychology will tell you that people that see someone face to face or on camera or whatever that is attractive and charismatic, they automatically much more believe them and feel that they're genuine and good. That's basic psychology. And I mean, I've got basic psychology, I was taught that then years ago. So again, just because an individual has studied and seems knowledgeable because they've read many, many books and gone on many courses does not make them spiritual. And in a similar way, just because someone that is, let's put them in a teaching capacity or therapy capacity or any kind of arena like that within the lightworker industry, because they are attractive and charismatic does not mean they're coming from a spiritual frequency. So this is basic psychology. So in other words, use your discernment. Use your discernment. 7. I'm on number 7, aren't I? Yeah, da, 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 da. Yes, I am. I think I'm on number 7, yes. To be spiritual, you must have lived a life of purity or must transform yourself to live a life like a nun or a monk. False. To be spiritual, you need to have lived. I'm going to repeat this again slowly. To be spiritual, you must have lived or be living a life of absolute purity, like a nun or a monk. False. To be spiritual, you need to have lived, full stop. In other words, experience the play of life in its many forms through polarized choices, left-hand turns or right-hand turns, learning and growing until a state of soul evolution, consciousness has been reached to 0 point field, co-creator consciousness, neutral consciousness, achieved by you as the soul in embodiment. This could have taken you many lives or one life, but we have the opportunity to do it in this one, here and now. 8. Gaining vast qualifications in the lightwork industry or attending multiple seminars makes one more spiritual and enlightened. I'm only laughing again because I've seen this so many times. And so many people, I'm not meaning being mean here, but I'm laughing because I've seen this so many times. False. Whilst being in spiritual workshops, seminars, or similar can expose one, inspire one, or temporarily enhance one to the wisdom and teachings, and even attune one to the teacher's frequencies temporarily. Spirituality is a process of purified consciousness which the walker, i.e. the person that attends them, must walk the walk of in their everyday life. So I'm going to repeat that. Sun's come out now, so I hope you can still see me. Gaining vast qualifications in the lightworker industry or attending multiple seminars or workshop is making one more spiritual. False. And again, this can be a form of spiritual bypassing. Yeah, it can be inspiring, wonderful, help us to grow, attending these workshops and seminars, absolutely. But I'm talking about people that do it all the time, constantly, all the time, all the time, all the time. Whilst being in spiritual workshops, seminars or similar can expose one, inspire one, or temporarily attune or enhance one to the wisdom and teachings and the vibration of the, I want to say, teacher, according to the teacher's own frequencies, which they can attune then to. Spirituality is a process of purified consciousness, which the walker, in other words, the person attending the seminars, the regular seminars, the walker must walk the walk of in everyday life. In other words, might nudge them along, but they still have to walk the walk. 9. Spiritual people are blissed out all the time. False. False. This can be a big form of spiritual bypassing, this one. Yes, being in a loved up, blissful state of perception and frequency feels wonderful. And it can be wonderful to experience life through that filter, absolutely. But that human being is still in that same, let's say same polarized world, in a polarized consciousness world. For the best part at this point in time, it's still polarized. Yeah, there are massive changes happening in that arena, but it's still polarized. So those people are still living in polarized conditions, perhaps in their own personal lives too, but their perception helps them to get through it, and that blissed out, loved out perception helps them get through it, and they manage to come back into a reasonable state of balance or homeostasis quite quickly or more frequently. So I'm going to repeat that. Spiritual people are blissed out all the time. False. They can choose that perception, or they can genuinely feel those feelings a lot of the time because they're choosing that frequency. They have to be aware also they're not bypassing other stuff. Let's say other realities, let's say, and spiritual bypassing things because there are other things they don't want to face. But that perception is a wonderful perception to be in. It's fantastic and it feels fantastic. But they are living on the same polarized planets and sometimes in the same polarized conditions as everybody else. But what they do is they manage to come back into a reasonable state of balance or homeostasis much more frequently. Finally, number 10, to be spiritual or a true light worker, one must be or have been in prolonged suffering, prolonged sacrifice, prolonged poverty, prolonged isolation, in order to make them good and pure to help others. To be spiritual or a true light worker, one must have been or be in prolonged suffering, prolonged sacrifice, prolonged poverty and isolation. Now, in order to make them good or pure people. I'm only smiling here again because I've been through at length every one of those categories, believing they were mine and realizing that they're actually massive programs running through the lightworker industry, a belief system like we have in many areas of life, including many religions. So false, a big fat false on this one. Very many are caught up in this and have been caught up in this, including myself. Although varied life experience, polarized life experience is beneficial to the revealing of one's own empathy, one's own compassion, one's own genuine qualities, one's own independence, the realization of whom they truly are. So always beneficial in that sense. Continued prolonged suffering, continued prolonged poverty, continued prolonged isolation, and continued prolonged self-sacrifice is not bringing one closer to ultimate source, to ultimate life force, but is walking one further away from it. I'm going to repeat that one again. It's a big one. So many of us in that industry, including myself, have been caught up in either one or all of those. I've experienced all of those in very polarized forms, actually. To be spiritual or a true light worker, one must have been in or is still in prolonged suffering, prolonged sacrifice, self-sacrifice, prolonged poverty, prolonged isolation, in order to make them good and pure to help others. Whilst every situation we can learn from and grow from, very many are caught in this, and that includes myself. I still am certain levels of that and have been caught in that for a long time, and I've only just had recent realizations on it. Although life experience is beneficial to revealing one's inner diamond, really, one's own compassion, one's own love, consciousness, purity, independence, and the realization to who one truly is. Continued suffering, continued poverty, continued isolation and self-sacrifice is not bringing one closer to Source or God, whatever name you want to give Source. It is taking one further away from it. That's a whopping great one, isn't it? So as always, some of these things you might like, some of these things you might totally disagree with, some of these things they might trigger you. Again, take it in the spirit in which it has been presented. I'm really hoping that it gives people food for thought, that they start to look at, hang on a minute, am I caught up in that? And gets people thinking, hopefully gets them detached from some negative things that haven't been serving them within that arena. That this includes people that work in it or people that are on the, let's say, the receiving end of it. Anyway, as always, I will love you and leave you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And the next video up here will probably be the one that I did some work with the authenticity process in Australia yesterday, and it'll probably be that one. Okay, lots of love to you guys, and thank you. Thanks for watching. Bye.